At that time, it was the reality just slapped me in the face really quickly.
Earlier in your career, you were shy. What helped you come out of your shell and become the community leader that you are today?
That time, everyone was using LinkedIn as the resume place, taking the fact I was getting invited to come and talk about what I was doing. I started looking at how could I use that to connect with people? How could I use it as a way to open a door? How could I use it to build the relationship? We were adding partners to resell our solution. We were closing business. We were building relationships. It was working.
What was a moment where stepping out of your comfort zone kind of changed everything for you?
The more I did with those presentations, it got to a point where I was then starting getting invited by Microsoft. Today, I don't believe it's a volume play as much. It's more about who you have in your network.
Welcome to this week's episode of Power Talks. My name is Griffin, the host of the Citizen Developer channel. And today, I'm joined by special guest Jon Rivers. Jon, thank you so much for being here. I wanted to ask you, somebody with lots of experience in the industry, in Microsoft Dynamics, you've told me that earlier in your career you were shy, and I think that there's a lot of people out there that can maybe resonate with that, whether it's feeling inadequate or imposter syndrome or being an introvert. What helped you come out of your shell and become the community leader that you are today?
So before we jump into answering that question, thanks Griffin for having me on your podcast. I'm sort of excited to join you today. I've been listening to a few of your podcasts and hey, you're doing a great job there. Why did we talk about the shyness? So going back when I first got into sort of the Microsoft space, I spent many years working as a consultant for an ISV, as well as help desk and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, if he's doing that, why the shyness? So I was working with a lot of clients, and then as my career started to change, I got more and more into pre-sales, and then down to that, I started getting more involved in basically partner management. I actually ended up leaving an ISV that I was working at and joined as an ISV manager, basically to manage the relationships between that ISV and also the partners that they either were working with or wanted to work with. And at that time, it was like the reality just slapped me in the face really quickly. It's like, well, hang on a minute, I've got to do cold calling. And cold calling was not the place I wanted to be. And that was just one, right? Also going to events, right? If it's Summit, Directions, Dynamics Call, those types of events. Well, hang on a minute. I've also got a network. I've got to talk to people. I can't not. This is my role. It was like, so I had a double take trying to think, what did I let myself into? So back then, how did I go and resolve? So as you said, shy. I was shy. I'd just take an event. If I walked into an event, I'd be that person standing in the corner trying to find a way to get out of it as soon as possible. But at least I could say to my bosses that, hey, I'd been there for a period of time. It just didn't make too many contacts. So roll forward a little bit. It's at that time, this was this is what now probably 14, 15, maybe 16 years ago. So it was at the early stages of LinkedIn. At that time, everyone was using LinkedIn as the resume place, right? It was the place to go. So a little bit back in probably before your career even started, right? At the end of the day, LinkedIn was a place that I felt comfortable, as well as some other social media channels. And I started looking at how could I use that to connect with people? How could I use it as a way to open a door? How could I use it to build the relationships? And that's what I did. So we talk about social selling today. I was doing that way back before that terminology was even coined. So I started going out there and connecting with people that made sense to connect with on LinkedIn. And I just kept on building that out. And over time, what that did is it started to build up a good rapport with people. So, hey, let's just take a hypothetical, right? Hey, I didn't know you, Griffin. We sort of met on LinkedIn. You started following. We started talking a bit back and forth. And over time, we ended up then going to an event. Well, we already sort of knew each other, right? Even though it was virtually, we'd broken that ice. And that helped me tons to break down that shyness. I warned you before I was coming on this call. Some of my stuff would be a little bit long-winded, but at the end of the day, that's what I did. I did a lot of that, but I then used social to drive even more. So LinkedIn was one of my number ones at that time. Twitter was the place to be as well. So I used Twitter to actually share stories about products and all that stuff. It got to the point where this is where it started to get even more complicated for me, being a shy person, is that I was starting to get invited to come and talk about how, as an ISV, we were using social media to drive business. So roll on to events, and it's like, can you come and speak to it? Share your story with others. And it's like, oh my God, here we go again. We have to get past this one. So getting into sharing. But at the same time, I said yes. I always kept on pushing myself. I mean, I could go back even further back. I've always constantly tried to push myself. And I got to a point where it's like, okay, the worst I can do is screw up and they won't have me back as a speaker. But because the topic was something I knew very well, because it was something I was doing, I could easily talk to it. And that's what I did. And I still remember this day. I think it was the first one. I was talking about how to use LinkedIn, and there was someone in the room, and I will not call their name out because I can still remember them, I can still see them, and they were like, what the hell are you talking about, John? This is not possible. And many, many years later, they started doing exactly what I told them. They said, damn, you were so ahead of it, we weren't ready for it at that time. So yeah, so what really broke the ice for me, and still does, even to this day, and probably a lot of people around me, it's like, yeah, John's not shy. Yes, I am deep down. At the end of the day, there are times where I'll walk in and it's like, I'll struggle, but I continue to fight it. But at the end of the day, what I'll do is I'll look for someone that I know in the room to at least break that initial ice.
Yeah. What was kind of like what was a moment where stepping out of your comfort zone kind of changed everything for you? Like, do you have a specific moment that you kind of remember or think back on like, this was a huge first kind of stepping stone in that? Because I think about even what you were saying at the end there, in that business or those people you were working with were like, hey, we weren't even able to see this vision you were casting. I think a lot of people can maybe have that same issue kind of with maybe wanting to share what they're learning online, but not even really sure how to get there. Like, what was that first step for you?
I honestly don't know what my real first step is. I mean, I know later on was starting to get credit for what I was doing, right? So I think at the end of the day is taking, let's say for example, like taking the fact I was getting invited to come and talk about what I was doing, right? And how that was helping. I suppose I could probably take it back. At the end of the day, it was working. We were adding partners to resell our solution. We were closing business. We were building relationships. So that was working, but I would say to me, it was probably that once I got, and people then started talking about it, it's like, hey, you need to talk to John if you want to try this different method. And rolling on, as the more I did with those presentations, it got to a point where I was then starting getting invited by Microsoft as well to come and talk at events. It got to an area where I used to go to, and some people, it's probably before your time, but there used to be a conference called the Worldwide Partner Conference, happened in July, where all the Microsoft partners got together with Microsoft, pure partner, massive event. like 16,000, 20,000 people. And I started going to those, but I used my experience with Twitter. So again, I would go sit in a keynote and I would just tweet everything that I was hearing. Not only that, I would retweet everything that maybe Griffin was talking about. And over time, what was happening is they used to have a billboard would show like the top person. I was hitting the board all the time. And then I started getting invited by Microsoft to be on their externals like social media team to actually come in and really emphasize everything that was being said. So of course we knew certain things which were coming, so we talk about it. It got to the point where I was and this is just Twitter alone, I put out so many messages in a set amount of time. And probably a few people have heard the story now, but Twitter used to shut me down. Literally would shut me down because they assumed I was spamming. Right? So I wasn't. At the end of the day I was doing everything manual, but I was beating the volume of what they were allowing a user to put out in a certain time period. So what would happen, I'd get shut down, and then suddenly everyone's messaging out there. It's like, well, something's happened to Jon. It's like, and eventually it got to a point where people heard about it. And it's like, okay, Jon's got shut down again. And even Microsoft around that period of time, so this is a matter over a few years, actually went out to Twitter to ask them if they would stop putting me into the jailhouse to do a Twitter, because they wanted it, because I could get the volume. I also laugh at this as well, Griffin. It's like every year after always hitting the leaderboard, they seemed to be changing the algorithm, so trying to let others. But I seem to beat it every time, to a point where it's been going down in another area that I get excited about. Is there was one WPC Inspire event I went to, and I actually had Microsoft's execs looking for me to come and talk to me because of what I was doing out there. And I think that just elevated everything I did.
Man. That's actually hilarious. I feel like we need like a custom app or something that says, "Hey, Jon's Twitter status is down right now."
Well, it got to that. People used to put it out. It's like it got out there. It's like someone put it out. It's like, well, we think Jon's down is because he's hit the volume. But what would happen is they would shut it down for like, I don't know, I think it was like 10, 15 minutes, and then it would come back again. And then but I was still smashing everyone else because on the leaderboards, because they still couldn't keep up with the quantity. But nowadays, so I don't put that much out. I don't use Twitter as much as in the B2B space as I used to, but and I probably don't put the volume out. But going back as well, I think the other one, as I look back, is I built up a huge network of connections on LinkedIn. Today I'm close to like 20,000 connections, but back in at that time when I was using it, not saying I don't use it today, but when I was using it for that ISV, I probably had something around 13,000, maybe a little bit less, of people around the world that worked in the Dynamics ecosystem. That was my focus. Yes, I would go out and put friends and family in there, but my bulk of my connections was the people that could actually help me in business.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually something that I am thinking a lot about, in that, a young professional, so I might not necessarily have like the strongest network, and I struggle with comparing myself to people who have been in the industry for a long time, and that's not really fair and not a healthy habit to do, to compare myself. But I think often about like, how important my network really is, especially in this industry. I mean, side note, I think the community involvement in the Power Platform and Microsoft Dynamics, it has to be so unmatched. Like, it is so special, just the community compared to other industries, that it's like you actually are straight up missing out if you are not involved in some capacity. But I also think, just from a stance of, I mean, I love what I do and I love where I'm at, but from a stance of even like a job security conversation, in a sense of, I mean, it definitely inspires me as well to build up a network, in that it makes me more valuable in the marketplace. Or if something were to happen, or if I wanted to take a step in my career that would involve going somewhere, like I would have a network to lean on in those times as well. And so I think about things like that. And again, not that I am necessarily looking for any of that right now, but you know what I mean? Like, nonetheless, just like understanding the value in that having a network has, you know?
I think, yeah, and I definitely would agree with you, but it's not I talk to probably a volume play a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not, today I don't believe it's a volume play as much. It's more about who you have in your network, right? So at the end of the day, if you are, I'll applaud you again with you doing your podcast, because that gets you out there and you're sharing great interviews with people, and at the end of the day is others are going to listen to that, right? So I'm trying to think of someone, but at the end of the day is maybe you're not necessarily connected to them, or you are. At the end of the day, you have them as a person that comes on. They go and share that podcast as well. It's going down to their network, so you're opening up that network as well, not just yours. I mean, in my day-to-day business, we do a lot of thought leadership content, and we use LinkedIn a lot for that model. But at the end of the day, it's not like traditional writing. You got to go a lot deeper. And what we find is that it's not always down to the quantity of people you have in connections that we get involved. It's the quality of the connections, first of all, and then how you use those contacts to then bounce things over, right? So commenting and stuff like that. So I think all of that does help as well. But I mean, you also talked about there, Griffin, about what would happen if something happened with your career, like today. Would that help? 100% yes, it probably will, because people know who you are and possibly what you do. But let's also throw that back as well. It is also beneficial, and I think this is the challenge sometimes we have with some employers. It is actually beneficial to the employer as well, doing something like a podcast, right? Even that you're probably doing it a lot more on your own dime, your own time. But it's not just benefiting you, it's benefiting the company as well. Because it's when people look at who is Griffin, they're going to look at where you are, and they're going to give credit also to the employer. And I think that's a struggle. I was talking to someone the other day is about blog writing, right? Should I give, if again, I'm just going to use you, Griffin, but if we have an article that someone else has ghostwritten, should we give Griffin credit for it? Well, if Griffin's got a reach, 100% yes. But then the argument comes back to that is, well, hang a minute, what happens if Griffin leaves? Or at the end of the day, we're pushing him up. At the end of the day, let go of that and go and trust the system, because Griffin's not going to leave unless he's unhappy. That's number one. If you keep on helping him, he's going to help you back. And it's actually beneficial to the organization as well. The same goes, I mean, you could argue it's like you get MVP status, right? Well, that's you as an individual. It's not the company. Yes, the company is getting credit because you can list it, but it's you as a person that's got it. So, and that moves with you, it doesn't stay with the company. So you can argue over that as well, right? If I was a partner in ISV and having an MVP on my team, I would be singing all the time in a good way. Not crying that, oh my God, here we go. It's like that person's going to leave. They only leave when they're not happy, right? So at the end of the day is building up your network, if it's through LinkedIn and through the community, is really key. And it's key in driving business as well.
Hey, if you are finding this video impactful or insightful, be sure to like and subscribe. But more importantly, if you are wanting to learn more about the Microsoft Power Platform, then you are going to want to check out the completely free self-paced course that has all of the hand-picked content directly from me as the first link down in the description down below. This is going to teach you everything you need to know about the Power Platform to get started and pass your first few Microsoft certifications. I can honestly say that as a Power Platform consultant myself, that I love what I do, and I don't think many people in today's day and age can say that. If you are wanting to learn more, as I mentioned, be sure to check out the first link in the description down below to get in direct contact and connect with me. All right, let's get back to the conversation. I think what you said there really encouraged me, and maybe you didn't even mean to say it like this, but I think about, not the quantity, but the quality. And like I definitely put a lot of energy and effort into these conversations and the YouTube channel. And I'd be lying if I told you I had never been discouraged by like the lack of like analytical performance, I guess I would say, of them, but at the same time, it's really consistent, and you get really nice comments. I've had people send a video in a LinkedIn message to me before of them thanking me for a conversation, and I'm like, all right, there's something that I'm doing right, in that they enjoyed this conversation enough to like record a video of themselves in the car and send it to me, telling me how much they liked it. And so I think about that, and like, okay, sure, most of these episodes get around 100 views, not including the podcast listens, but just YouTube for the sake of simple example, like 100 views. But I don't know who those 100 people are that are viewing it, It could be one person who is a college student and doesn't know where to go, and they just learned about the Power Platform, and now they're going to be able to start a career. Or it's somebody who has been stuck in a certain role or at a position doing something they don't really care for, or feels like they need the next step, and then they unlock some secret from talking to an expert that they give about leveling up a certain soft skill or something in the conversation. Or even I even had an example where there was an organization or somebody a decision maker at an organization came across one of my videos and ended up reaching out to my company. And I guess at some point, I don't necessarily know how it's gone through the sales process, but was like interested in starting some sort of like working together, and was a new lead for the company. And so like, I think the topic is really interesting of how organizations should feel about how employees are pushing themselves to grow their own personal networks. Because you're right, it does directly serve me maybe more than them, but it also is serving them in some capacity, And so I think that's interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to, sorry to cut you off there. I was thinking about what you were saying is, again, I think it disappeared for a bit, but it's sort of come back a lot more. Equivalent to some of the things like podcasts, LinkedIn, and social. I know it sounds weird, but it's a little bit like the old school days of the golf course. Basically, you're going to meet people. That's where you try to drive more relationship building. You're trying to hopefully drive maybe some business from it. And social is probably helped a lot of folks who are probably, they can't play golf, or that's not where they are, and or they're shy, and it's a way to take away, because at the end of the day, you're hidden behind the system, right? So think of it look like that. Going back to your comment about the analytics, at the end of the day, sometimes it takes time to build up, right? You may find, like you said, you have 100 views today, but suddenly, sometimes you get to that point where I just can't get past 101. And I'm like sat on that for months. And then suddenly, you just have a spike. And before you know it, you're up in the 200s. And after every single one of those, it keeps on going up. So I think there's also a volume play that you plateau out at some points, and then it hits again, then it hits again. And I would say just keep doing it. It's also it's also your network. I mean, I think probably most of the way you promote your podcast and that is going to be through LinkedIn, right? So if your LinkedIn, and I'm not going to say that, I'm going to use the word not strong, but if you're not connected to a lot of people, it's not going to go too much further. I think I came about, so I'm looking back and I'm trying to think how I came about your podcast. And I think it was, I think Mary Myers actually commented on one of yours, and then because she commented, I'm connected to her, that came up on my feed, right? And then that's when I think I listened to it, and I think actually at that time is when I reached out to you, and I kept on then following from that point onwards. But if I hadn't seen it from Mary, I may at some point have seen it, but at the end of the day, sometimes it takes others to get there. So hopefully, when this goes live between us, we'll get you up over 100. That's my goal.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We'll shoot for 200 on this one, right?
There you go.
And so, no, I think that's awesome. I think that I have maybe a switch up in topic of conversation. It's similar, but maybe a switch. I wanted to ask you, what is one misconception that people have about success in the industry? And I guess that could maybe be organizationally, or that could be individually. What's a misconception that people have about what success means in the Dynamics Power Platform industry?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I suppose again, it depends on where you're looking at it, right? We could use your example, right, and say, hey, I've only hit 100, I'm not being successful, right, on views. Really, my goal in my mind was to hit 1,000 views. I'm not getting there. Am I being successful or not successful? Again, I think it goes back to quality over quantity. At the end of the day, and I think you pulled it up, at the end of the day is, out of the 100 views, am I hitting people that are interested, or am I getting the college student or a friend or a family member that's just, they're sending it around to all their people, right? Or my nephews, cousins. Before we've got 99 people that are actually family that are actually watching it. One person actually watches it. So I think at the end of the day is, don't push yourself. I think at the end of the day, be realistic on some of the goals. I was reading something the other day about, someone posted about, I'm trying to rack my brain who it was, but even if I remember, I probably won't call it. But they were talking about that they were nominated for an MVP and they declined. And you sort of think in your mind, the first thing which was very interested in reading that whole feed, it's like, why would you do that? You could have elevated. And it was like, I don't want to be an MVP, because they had their own reasons as well. But there was also the others that had it. So at the end of the day is, in their minds, they were still successful, but they didn't have to have that MVP status. Right? So I think I think you have to make a choice. You have to set down what you feel is your own goals, but don't go by what other people and their goals are.
Definitely. No, I think as well, to continue the conversation on what people define success is, like, something that I'm really trying to focus on is the value of experience. Like the certain projects that I'm on, or the team members that I'm working with, or like right now I'm a solution consultant, in that, I'm able to work with a solution architect and really just like soak up how they work, how they design solutions, how they do that, how they talk to the customer, how they cast a vision on a future enhancement or a phase 2, and like really just like sitting in that and just like soaking it up, that experience. And like I think the tech industry in general can be a lot of times people are more, or maybe a little too quick to just like grass is greener and jump to chase the money. That's, I guess, the conversation like that I think about, and like what does success mean, in that, like, I don't know, I'm really trying to just like rest in like success in the industry is going to be the experience and the expertise and the soft skills. It's not necessarily going to be even a title or, the salary or the bonus or things like that. Like, what are your thoughts kind of, taking it from a networking perspective, but into like a career job perspective on success?
So, I would definitely say through my career, I've definitely gone through that, right? Wanting to earn more money, wanting the title, right? And then looking around and thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm classed as a manager. Why have they got a VP role, but they actually technically do less than what I do, and I actually maybe drive more in XYZ than they do, but they have a VP role? It's like, why? They, at the same time, they have a VP role or a role that should have technically in your mind, and maybe I'm being old school here, I don't know, it's like in your mind you think, well, they should have people underneath them, but they still have a grand title, but technically to me that title should have people, and it doesn't. But as I've got older, I think at the end of the day is, as I've built a couple marketing agencies over time, there's definitely been the ups and downs through that period. It's like, yeah, I could probably, at certain points through it, as I've grown it, is said, okay, enough's enough. Maybe I need to go back and work for someone because I could probably earn 3 times, 4 times as much as I do. But I think at the end of the day is I enjoy, and it's also the value on that and coming across and saying, okay, it's not just that enjoyment, it's that work-life balance, right? At the end of the day is, if I need to go and drop off at 4 o'clock today to go and pick up my daughter from school, or or one of them's got flag football or orchestra, I don't have to go and ask someone for that permission, right? Maybe I think so. There is that balance for me. So I think there's also, it's not all about money. I think it's changing. I think some of the younger generation probably have that mindset a little bit. So I think some of those in my mind, Griffin, but I think for me as well is over the years, and I was at a Directions conference recently, and I had 2 or 3 people came up and just reminded me, it's like back 5, 6, 3, whatever number of years it was, is that I helped them with getting to where they're starting of their journey, right? So one person I think of is like, I was early mentoring to do with social media, and now there probably someone out there that's doing it in some places. I probably could easily be mentored by them in some cases. So it's things like that as well, I think, and I enjoy that. To me is the value of that, to see others be successful means that what I was talking about was right at the time. So there's a value to that, but not a direct dollar to it.
Sure. You introduced a topic I also wanted to discuss, and that was, marketing agencies. And so right now, you're the CEO at Marketeery. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yep.
Is that right?
I am actually the Chief Operating Officer for Marketeery, but you got the name of the company right.
What did I say? That's what I meant to say.
You said CEO, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have COO in my notes as well. So I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's fine.
Well, anyways, you taking that idea of like what you're talking about, in that like it's not about the money. You have a quote on here. It says, "You're willing to help others and a believer in giving, not taking." Like,
right.
How do you live by that, or how do you live that out, especially as the COO at a marketing agency?
I think it's, how do I live it out? At the end of the day is, and it is honestly a tough one, is because I love, as I gave you that quote, is that I love to give back, and some days it can eat in. It's like, say for example, it's like I spent 11 years on the board for Directions, which is a voluntary role. At the peak, I probably spent somewhere between 400 to 500 hours in a year of voluntary time, right? So you start to look at that and you think, ooh, what happens if I put that into my business, right? So at the end of the day, I've come off that board now. My business partner was doing that, doing time on there as well. And it's and I'm sort of going to go to the balancing here is actually when the two of us came off, since we came off, we've probably doubled, if not trebled, the size of our business. So you can argue and say, well, okay, was all that work just eating away? You just didn't have time for the day-to-day. But you could also counter that and say, all the relationships, all the giving is now paying back, right? So you can look at it in different ways because you're building relationships. But I never go into something to give to expect something back. That's not how I was ever brought up. At the end of the day is you give with necessary nothing at the end is to make sure. And I think at the end of the day, I find it hard not to give sometimes. I know my business partner's like, what would you just did? You just volunteer to get, oh yeah, it was only a couple hours, I'll make sure it doesn't. So at the end of the day is, I'm very conscious of that, but I think at the end of the day, it really does help deep down. And again, my piece on that would be building trust, right? If I can build trust by giving it and trusting the audience, and yes, it might turn into something, but at the end of the day is giving back, but it's also the excitement to see others come up through as well.
Yeah. What's kind of the biggest mistake you find organizations or Microsoft partners make when it comes to marketing in the Microsoft ecosystem? And not to tell you to give away your secret sauce here, but you know what I mean? Like what are kind of those mistakes that you find people are regularly making, and how maybe you would help them, or how you would help them fix them, I guess?
I think one of the big ones I see a lot is the investment. There's a lot of partners we walk into which probably are on the smaller side, and they're not really spending anything on marketing, but are expecting leads. I think that's definitely an error I see a lot of. At the end of the day, you got to put some skin in the game. I think that's, and you got to come up with a percentage, but you need someone that's got, I would also, and I'm probably thinking this one through as I'm trying to answer it. I think the other one is as well is it's great if you are the owner of the company trying to do marketing, but you're probably also doing 20,000 other things. You really need to have someone that's dedicated. Now, is that someone internally? Not necessarily. You could have more of a junior internally and use an external person. Look at that. What does that give you? I think those are keys. I would call the other one is the shiny object syndrome, right? So today, hey, I heard Jon talk about I should be using LinkedIn. I go and try it for 3 months, or I heard Griffin is like, or Jon and Griffin talk about podcasts. Well, let's set one up. And I give up in 3 or 6 months because I don't see any movement. It's not about, at the end of the day, these are building foundations. They don't happen overnight. At the end of the day, you got to keep on at it. And I see that a lot is that people will spend, say, 3 months, and then they'll turn it off and wonder why it didn't work. Instead of it could be that 4th month, everything suddenly happens. So there is that a little bit as well, but I would say the key is investing. You got to invest in it. You can't. We live in a world now. Plus, at the end of the day, if you're not doing it, your competitors are.
Sure, I like the term investment there because it, at least from my own journey as well, in trying to grow my personal brand, in that it's like, I don't know, the image or like the metaphor I guess I have is like there's this huge like boulder, and I'm just like, takes so much effort to get this boulder like just to move 6 inches, and it just like it takes so either long or so many videos, so many LinkedIn posts, so many hours to just like what feels like to get the boulder just to move a tiny little bit. But once it's like, once you've gotten it moving, then it has some of that momentum, right? And that the next 6 inches is a lot easier, and then the next 4 feet, and then the next 10 feet. You know what I mean? Like that idea of the snowball effect. And I definitely would not say that I'm there, but I definitely feel like like the effort I guess I have to put in now to get X amount of analytical performance could be less than when 2 years ago when I first started to get that same thing. But I also didn't expect it to take as long as it necessarily has either, I think that there's this idea of like virality, and that like, oh, well, it only takes one. So the idea is like, if it only takes one, why do I have to do 365 of these if it only takes one,
Right. And sometimes it could be just that one, but it's just that one that just hit the mark. And sometimes it's not the guest. It just happened to be timing. It's all the others that actually led up to it. I suppose you could also, I could take it back as well. It's like, all right, so I'm sponsoring an event, right? And someone comes up to my booth and wants to learn more about what I do. Did that prospect truly meet you for the first time at the booth? Or were they already researching you way, way ahead of time? And they didn't tell you that. So at the end of the day, and you have, your systems can't track it. I mean, some people can, but at the end of the day, you're not able to track. You don't know. So when did they truly hit you first? I mean, that's also a big question, right? So at the end of the day and that maybe rolls through to, but you ask them, it's like when, and 9 out of 10 times most people will come back to that, or maybe going back, I mean, you sort of alluded to it. It's like, I'm doing a podcast. I'm doing this social. I'm doing this. Do they truly tell you when they first heard about you? And I think that's also a key. Sometimes we assume, but it's not always what the true data is. I think that's definitely, but sometimes you have to just keep on at it. I can tell you from my experience, when I turn off the noise, what I call the noise, which is me talking out on social, I see a drop in stuff coming, right? And we all get busy, right? The thing is, at the end of the day, we're busy, we're doing stuff. I mean, I've got a few projects which are on the burner at the moment that I want to put out. That by me delaying them, it's actually not doing me any good, because by the time I release them, they're going to be stale. But it's trying to find that time, and maybe Griffin, I shouldn't have had this call with you because maybe I could have did it. But at the end of the day, that having this call is still better than me putting that. But you get where my point is sometimes there's certain things you want to get to, or writing a blog, right? So back in the days, I probably could have written a 500-word blog and not think twice about it. Now it's like, and this is not for everyone, but I find my longer blogs are 1,500, 2,000. I know my proofreaders hate it when I put stuff in front of them that long, but the longer and the more detailed, they get bigger and more hits. But they take a long time and a lot of effort to put together, because you got to go and do the research. I'm not saying you don't research on 5, but they take longer to do. So I think at the end of the day is you just got to keep in it, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's another key area I would say to people. I mean, you got to build the trust, right? At the end of the day is, if I walked up to you right at the beginning and you didn't know who I was and said, hey, Griffin, could I be on your podcast? You might say no, right? You may have like, well, what's the point? I want to find people that can benefit me and talk about. So it's some of it's timing as well.
Sure, man. I think there's so much that people can take from this conversation and just value. And I already feel like I'm gonna have to call it the networking masterclass with Jon. So thank you for all the secret sauce you've shared and that we've discussed on here. I wanted, for the sake of time, to switch it over to the after hours happy hour conversation of the show, and get to know you a little bit more outside of work. Something that you had said that you love to do is, are you a car guy? It sounds like you're maybe a car guy.
Yeah,
I'm not a car guy. So I feel like if I tried to speak to it, I would just do a huge injustice. So tell me more. Tell me more.
Right. So I'll tell you a little bit more, but before I jump into that, so just talking about things that sometimes get people's reaction. The other day, it's like I'd been so deep in doing some SEO work and research for a few clients, I needed to get my head away from that and do something else. So I started running through, and you've probably seen it where people were doing the action figures in the boxes, and I had to go off and do that myself. It's like I played around with it, but it was like, okay. But instead of just, most people had done the action figures of what they do in their daytime. What I did was what I like to do in my off time. And so I talked about is the classic car. And I love old Volkswagens. And you can probably see in the picture the bottom of a bus. But I actually have an old 1973 Common Gear convertible that we call Orange Crush. That I take to events, and I'm happy to see it back in my garage today because we were having some issues with it and I had to take it into the shop, but luckily I'd somehow fixed half of it myself. God knows what I did, but I did get there. But there was one thing that somehow a wire had come loose, and that was causing what I couldn't work out. So that's what I love to do, is I love to go to events. That's one of my hobbies out there. And actually going back to that post I put out, it is still tracking to this day, and it's only a couple of weeks. It is smashing all of the stats than any other piece of content. All right, so the end of the day is, I know we went into my thing I'd like outside, but don't be scared to sometimes put other things which are a little bit more personal, and it's actually interesting. People love to react to that. And I've got something up my sleeve that will mix the two together. I don't want to give it away because I've got to get on and do that project, but I've got something on my sleeve, so watch this space coming.
Super cool, man. Well, thank you, Jon, for being here and sharing all your expertise. If people were listening to this conversation and were either positively impacted by it or wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best way to reach you or to connect with you?
I would say is we got to say LinkedIn. Go and reach out. If you're connected to me, just send me a message and say, hey, what you love. Make sure you watch it. I mean, and hopefully you're listening to Griffin's session here, but make sure you comment down in his comments as well what really caught your attention, because that's going to help Griffin get this out. He has some great speakers, and more people will be able to listen to it. So I think it's that stuff. But find me on LinkedIn. If I'm not connected to you, send an invitation, but put a little bit of a message in there, because if you send it blind, which like connect and no message, I may just ignore you because I get so many of those messages.
Yeah.
And I have to smack my hand on them sometimes because I do it to others. And I shouldn't do it, because I preach that I want to see something from you before I connect, because the end of the day is I get so much junk stuff, and it's like, and I guarantee the one I go and say, okay, this sounds good, suddenly they're trying to spam me their services. It's like, did you not look at it? Yes, I'm in a dynamic space, and I'm not trying to hire someone to implement dynamics, or I'm not someone that sells dynamics. I don't need your services, but I get that stuff still. It's like, so put something in. So I'd say LinkedIn, and I'm also going to throw it out there and turn it around. If you're not connected to Griffin, make that invitation to Griffin as well.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, if you are still listening to this conversation, like, there are not many of you. Even with the 200 views, there are not many of you. And so, like, you're a real one, as I would call it. Like, you're awesome, and you let me know in the comments down below. And both of our LinkedIns are going to be found. You can find links to those in the description down below. So feel free to follow those there and to get in contact with us. Jon, thanks again for being here, man, truly. And thank you to you for sticking to the end of the video. My name is Griffin Lickfeld, the host of the Citizen Developer channel, and I'm excited to connect with you in the next one.